What is going on? Frank Kritzman, team leader here on the Emerald Coast in Florida. I've got a lot of good feedback about my videos where I just go through the contracts and show you guys how to fill them out. Previously, I did the as-is purchase contract, and so now we are just going to do the residential FAR purchase contract, the standard form, filling it out line by line. This is going to replace the contracts class that you have to sit through at your brokerage. That takes like 4 hours, and hopefully we'll get this done in like less than 10 minutes. Okay, let's see here. Okay, parties, seller. Make sure you're looking on the county appraiser website for any property that you're going to write an offer on. Sometimes the name isn't always complete in the MLS, or sometimes the agent only puts one person's name when there's actually two owners. So look on the appraiser website on the deed to find all of the parties for the selling side. Buying side, make sure you do full legal names as it appears on their driver's license. Street address, pretty self-explanatory. City, county, tax ID. This is also found on the property appraiser website. Legal description, that is found on the deed, which again is on the property appraiser website. Make sure you're very familiar with this paragraph right here. When your client says, what comes with this house when I buy it? These are the things that come with the house when you buy it. Again, make sure that you're familiar with everything in here. And when you go through on your final walkthrough, make sure that everything is still in the house that was there when you guys were showing it. This section right here, other personal property items. This could be if, say there's a table that your client really likes or something like that, you guys could put in there a kitchen table, something like that. I usually would just leave that out of it. Just work on the purchase contract and then get that totally done deal. Later on down the road, when it gets closer to closing, then I would try to see if there's some room to work through some personal property transfers. Purchase price, that is the price that you are offering. Initial deposit, that is the EMD amount. Typically it's around 1%. Make sure you check this box right here next to II, is to be made within. All these spots where it says if left blank, then 3 days. There's some other spots where it says, if left blank, 30 days, like for the financing contingency. Even though it says if left blank, then it means this, I would just err on the side of caution and just fill in that blank anyways, even if it's just the 3. That way you just leave out any room for somebody being able to throw in a number later because you for sure put a number in there. Escrow agent name, this is where your EMD is going to go. Typically it's going to be the same as the title company that you're closing with. If you're going to ask the seller to designate the closing agent and pay for the title policy, make sure you ask the listing agent what you want to put in for that. Additional deposit, this is usually just going to be 0. There's usually not any additional deposits that are made. Financing, you can do this as a dollar amount or a percentage. Like if it's a conventional, you could say it's 85% financing, or maybe they're just financing $200,000 of a $300,000 loan. Or if it's VA, it's going to be 100% financing most likely. So you could put 100% there, or just whatever the dollar amount they are financing. Other, most likely you're going to leave that blank. Balance to close right here, you're going to do your purchase price minus the deposit. So if your deposit's $5,000, purchase price is $300,000. Right here, you're going to put $295,000. Time for acceptance right here, I usually put 2 days in there. And I would also put a time on it, because if you just put a date, then technically it's midnight of that day. So a lot of times I'll put, a date 2 days in advance at 6 p.m. or at 4 p.m. or something like that. Okay, moving on to the second page. Closing date on, I would make sure you talk with the lender and make sure you're not putting an unrealistic timeline on there. If you're not aware, typical financing timelines are around 30 days. Make sure you don't write a date that's on a weekend or a holiday in that block, because it's obviously going to delay closing beyond that. Some people say it's not a good idea to schedule closing for a Friday, but I actually am pretty cool with it. Just got to make sure you're following up and really doing your due diligence to make sure that everything is ready to close on that date. All right, you're going to check this if the property is leased out. This right here is section 7 in the assignability. You want to check this box right here. They may not assign this contract. Assignment is like what wholesalers do. They would put something under contract. Let's say they put a house under contract for $200,000, and then they would actually assign that contract to somebody else for $210,000 or $220,000. Basically sell the contract for $220,000. They would take that $20,000 split, and then the house gets sold to person B. So you want to put may not assign on this contract. Section 8 is the financing contingency. This is another very important section to be familiar with. You want to make sure you check this box. Say this contract is contingent upon within, again, fill in that date, 30 days, after the effective date, buyer obtaining approval of yada, 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 one of these types of financing. If you're on day 29 and financing falls apart, your buyer is unable to get financing for that house, they are going to get their EMD back because they're in their financing contingency window. So on the flip side of that, if your buyer is trying to close on a house and you are coming up on the end of your financing contingency window, you want to make sure you ask for an extension just in case something happens with financing. In the event something happens with the financing, your buyer will not be liable. This one is fine. You can actually leave that one blank. Put 30 in there. 5 days in there, make the application within 5 days of financing. It just kind of describes the basic practices for your buyer and how they're supposed to be operating in good faith, yada, yada. Line 133, 134, you do not need to check either of those boxes most likely. Okay, now we are in section 9, and this is the main difference between a standard residential purchase contract and an as-is contract, which is the standard contract has a section for repair limits. I do have an entire video on all of the differences between the standard contract and the as-is contract. So if you are interested in that video, you can go check it out. But what you want to do here is put a dollar amount. You typically do not want to put a percentage in there. It's going to be very hard for an offer to get accepted. So you could put something in here for like $500, or you put in $500 there, or you want $1,000 for repairs. This last section is for costs associated with closing expired permits. If you're in any sort of competitive scenario where there's going to be multiple offers, you definitely don't want to put a very high amount in these repair requests, and you may want to consider not even using this contract at all. If you are the only person putting an offer in on a property and ahead of time there's some minor things that you want fixed before your buyer moves in, then that would be the time to use this contract. Next page, page 4. Title evidence, just put 15 in there. Okay, this section right here, seller designates closing agent or buyer shall designate closing agents and pay for owner's policy and charges. This is around $2,500. It's going to be different for title companies, but you need to make sure you are paying attention to which box you check. If you check this box, and that means the seller is designating closing agent paying for title charges, they are going to pay that $200 or $2,500 charge, and they're going to pick the title company that the contract closes with. If somebody mentions something to you in passing about, buyer pay title or seller pay title, this is what they're talking about, this section right here. Okay, this Miami-Dade regional provision, unless you're in that area, you're going to be able to ignore that. Home warranty, again, you can ask the seller to pay for a home warranty, but I would suggest against that. Definitely suggest against that if you are in any sort of competitive scenario with multiple offers. If you want to, you can always buy your buyers a home warranty. It's a very nice closing gift, and I've done that in the past. You can go and check out like American Home Shield or First American Home Warranty, usually around $500. You would just put a rough dollar amount estimate in there. All right, there's a little section right here, these two check boxes about paying installments for special assessments. Usually you're just going to be checking A and calling it a day. Next section, digging down through here. Oh, and if you aren't aware, you can look over the left side on these line numbers right here. Any line that has a star next to it, like this number right here, that means there is a spot with a blank that you have to fill out. So it's like that on the whole contract. If there's a star on the line, that means there's something for you to fill out there. Okay, you can see I've already been kind of digging in this contract a little bit. This is another difference between the standard contract and the as-is contract. Okay, so both of them have inspection periods, but the difference is on a standard contract, it is a lot harder to cancel a contract in an inspection period just because the buyer doesn't like the house, which that does happen a lot. Sometimes they just get spooked by the inspection and they're just kind of scared and they don't want the house anymore. Sometimes you might be able to talk them through that, but sometimes they're just like, nope, don't want it, different house. Take me to another one, cancel the contract, which is fine. But if you are going to use this contract, I would suggest that you accompany it with a right to inspect and cancel addendum or a right to inspect and cancel rider with this contract that gives you a free and clear ability to cancel the contract at any time from the buyer's sole discretion, as long as it's in that inspection window, which is whatever you put up here. Competitive scenarios, I wouldn't go any lower than 7. And if you're the only offer, you can go 10 or 15, should be fine. I would spend some time reading through this entire section because it gives the details for how the seller is obligated to leave the condition of the house in, and it lays out how a buyer is to cancel in case that there's a lot of repairs that need to be done. I've gotten into some tricky situations where we had to get legal involved in order to get my buyer's EMD back because the other agent wasn't really reading this contract that well. Just to be safe, make sure you're either using as is contract, or if you're using this contract, go ahead and use the right to inspect and cancel addendum. Nothing else to fill out on this page. Go to the next one. Again, more inspection standards, nothing to fill out. Same goes into default dispute resolution, goes through all the standards of the contract. Give this all a couple read-throughs just so that you are at least familiar what's in here. You don't need to have the entire thing memorized, but you should at least know where to go to find the answer for something. Then finally we get to 13. If there's any addendum that you want to throw in with this contract, this is where you would go ahead and check these boxes. If you had VA FHA financing, go do that there. If it's in an HOA, boom, right there. That addendum that I was talking about is right here, the right to inspect and cancel. So you would go and check that box and get that form and have them fill out that form and accompany it with this contract. Additional terms, you can really get weird and put just about anything in there. I like to think that almost anything is up for negotiation, so you can really get creative in there. Then make sure your buyers sign it right here and date. Cooperating sales associate, if you're writing this offer, that is going to be you. And then you just put your brokerage right here. You don't have to sign it, just your name and the brokerage is just fine. If this was helpful for you, make sure you press thumbs up on the video. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you have any requests, same thing. See you in the next one.